This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. Hello everyone, my guest today is Sharon Sananda Kumara. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, it's an honor to be here. Thank you, Heather.
Well, it's great to have you again. Now, you had a very elaborate near-death experience that you shared in part one, but you also had a near-death experience when you were a child. So can you step us through that one now?
Yes, of course. When I was 9 years old, I was dealing with, my parents were divorced. My sister and I lived with my grandparents. And I was dealing with some family, a family person abuse. And at the time, and I didn't remember this until later, until after my NDE in 2001, when all these memories started crashing forward. And I believe that was somewhat of a life review for me because I did not remember a lot of my childhood, most of my childhood. And so these memories started coming forward after my NDE in 2001, like I said, and they were pretty intense as they were coming through. And what I had repressed, the pain, all this sensory deprivation that children put themselves in when that is happening, came to the surface. So in this one memory, it was in my grandparents. We lived in my grandparents and my grandparents' backyard, and I was looking for agates at that time here in Oregon. You could find agates out in small towns in the backyard, and where a lot of places it's a little harder to find them now because a lot of people are rock hounds. So I was looking for agates in our grape orchard, and I just knew he was there. And as I was remembering this, I'm there in the experience, and that's what was so profound about these experiences. I'm actually there again. And this person, he's pulling me to him. I'm fighting him, and at one point he's hurting me, beating me pretty much, and he hits me with a blow underneath my ribs so hard that I completely stop breathing, lose my breath, and I could feel my chest just like that, and I feel intense pain, and I pop out of my body through my head. Again, I had the knowing that I had what we call died or transitioned, that I had left that life experience. I'm in this space, though. I'm very different from the one in 2001. I'm in this space that is darkness, but it's not really dark. I've heard people call it the void since remembering this experience. It's a nothingness, but it's not a negative type of nothingness. It's just being in this space of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's velvety type of thing. And I'm floating in this, and I feel complete peace. The pain is gone. Fear is gone. The terror is gone, like that. It's all gone. And I feel complete peace. And I'm floating in this supportive void, nothingness. And as I'm floating there, I realize that I am able to connect. Well, I'm able to have the awareness of being myself as this 9-year-old child, but I can also expand my awareness. And just like the planet, I can also expand my awareness to reach this universal knowledge. and it's so expansive, and I was moving in and out. It was a remembrance that I had because I hadn't left the afterlife that long before, since I was only 9 years old. So it was a remembrance that I remembered what this was and where this was, type of thing, even though I wasn't anywhere. How do you describe these things, right? And so I'm floating there, just enjoying this expansive and contraction and expanse and contract. And again, I don't know how long I was there, but I felt totally supported and totally at peace. And I get the sense of movement or something to my right side again. And as I turn my awareness that way, and I'm back to who I am as that little girl, my awareness is here. As I turn that in that direction, turn my awareness that direction, I I see a light, a pinprick of a light, and it expands and expands, and it becomes portal-like. And I see a figure, and he approaches me very, very quickly. It's very, very quickly, and I realize that it's Jesus, Yeshua. And I'm righted in some way to where he and I are together in that space. And I'm myself, and he tells me, he actually kneels down in front of me, and he's face to face or crouches in front of me. And he says to me, "You've suffered enough, my child. You don't have to go back." And I tell him telepathically again, and this is a communication we're having, excuse me, that I haven't finished what I was meant to do, what I came here to do. And so I needed to go back. I wanted to go back. I said, telepath to him, but I'm not finished. Even though I didn't really have I should say, I didn't have a direct memory of what had just happened. It just left my mind almost pretty much immediately when I left my body and was in that void, that space. But I knew that I had that awareness that I hadn't finished what I was there to do. It was too early. It was too soon. And that's another thing in my NDE in 2001 that I forgot to say is that Yeshua had let me know that my work wasn't finished, and that's why I needed to return. There was a lot I still had to do, and I realized that. And we had that conversation. We had lots of conversations. I had that conversation with him that I wouldn't really have time or the opportunity to reincarnate back into this density in order to move into this space that I needed to be in my life to heal what I needed to heal or work on whatever I was doing and move into that space to what I needed for my soul growth. And so I knew that as a little girl, but as an adult, I hadn't, the programs were pretty, were after all those years, since a 9-year-old, I didn't have that awareness at the time, but I did say to him, or I didn't remember it. I did say to him in 2001, all right, I'll go back, but you have to promise me that I will consciously know that you are there with me and beside me and helping me through.
That was a good call.
The whole thing. Exactly. Yeah. And so in the one when I was 9 was my memory of it is a lot quicker, or it wasn't as intense, and he didn't take me on a journey that I recall. Okay. So the next thing I know is I'm actually back in home. I'm not in that. Back in the scene of being abused. I'm back in my grandparents' yard, and he's not there.
Now, you had experiences with Jesus in both near-death experiences. And you seem to recognize him pretty quickly. Did you recognize him through looks or was it more of a feeling?
No, it was a feeling. It was a recognition of his frequency. He's pure love. He's reached that state of being able to access the God frequency. Yeah. And he's emanates love and light, the God frequency. So that's what I recognize. And I recognize him as the man who walked the planet, as Yeshua, because I have those memories within my soul memory.
And you call him Yeshua instead of Jesus. And why is that?
It resonates more with me because, and I also understand that, and when I found out later that was it, Yeshua ben Yosef is his Jewish name or his name in Hebrew. That I understand that his name he was not called Jesus. That was translated, I believe, from the Greek translations to make his name with a hard J, and that was not what his name actually was.
And do you think he cares what we call him?
I don't think he cares what we call him. It's just a frequency for me that feels more right and more correct to me than, I mean, Jesus he'll come, of course.
A big part of your first near-death experience was you visited this water planet that you felt very familiar with, very close to it. And you said you were reunited with your family. Mm-hmm. So did they see you? Did they interact with you?
Yes. Yes, they saw me. They interacted with me. They knew exactly what was happening. And I realized that this was a parallel life, I guess you could say. Not a past life, not a future life, but parallel. And they knew exactly what was happening with me. They have that because they are in that dimension, or that realm is in a higher frequency. So since my soul is connected to them, they know what's going on with me, if that makes any sense. And when something intense like that does happen, it's kind of like a mother knows when their child's in trouble type of deal. Okay. Yeah. So they knew what was happening with me and what was going on, and that, so they helped with that experience to, how do I put it, to welcome me home for as long as I could stay, or my awareness was there in that expression for, again, it could have been a lifetime. I could have been experiencing that lifetime, which is still ongoing, but I was there with my awareness in that lifetime. And yes, they knew what was going on with me. Long answer.
And explain the parallel life to me, because does that mean when you visited, there were two of you?
Well, so in a way.
You're one, but were there, yeah.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, definitely. Mm-hmm. So, yes, there was one body there in that realm, which was the aquatic body. In my awareness, because I didn't have a body as Sharon any longer, my body was on Earth. So my awareness as Sharon from Earth joined with my awareness as the aquatic being on that planet. So I have that. It was a merging of our awarenesses, our consciousness, so that I have that memory, because we all have those memories within our bodies of our parallel lives, because we're multidimensional in different frequencies, what I've remembered. And so I was able to have that awareness within that experience that expanded my experience here on Earth. Does that make sense?
Yes. I'm still trying to grasp all of this, but yes. The other thing you just mentioned is that you weren't sure if you were there, for a lifetime or a short period. And also in part one, you mentioned that in that realm, everything happens at once.
Mm-hmm.
And that concept of time has been really hard for me to grasp, because I keep thinking, if everything happens at once, isn't it all over at once? So is there any way you can explain how that works?
Well, I wish I had all the answers, right? This is the way it's just how I understand it at this point in time. Okay.
Yes.
And some days I understand it better than others, or we all are like that, right? Have more clarity than other days.
Yes.
So how I see it is that, okay, source would be imagine source is the sun, right? And so the source is the center of the sun, the hottest part of the sun. And the rays perhaps are journeys out from source, where our personalities move out from source. Okay. And as these rays of our soul aspects, because we're all part of source, as rays of the sun, we are on these cycles of experiences. We choose different experiences in different realms. So each ring around the sun is a frequency, whereas as we go further inward, it's a higher frequency. As we move further out, it's a denser frequency, because we think that we're going up or down. We're actually moving inward and moving outward from source, is how I understand it. And so we are able to see our experiences on the wheel, because everything is circular, cyclical kind of thing. So when we reach that point of being able to, how do I put it, have the awareness of our experiences on each of the on the wheel of frequency, we can move in and out on that ray, and it's all happening within these cycles at the same time. So we can move into that space of having that awareness on each of the rings of our our family, our soul family's space. We are able to see the experiences and the projections of our personality, our own experiences, because we're not linear. We're not linear. We think we're linear, but we're not. We're cyclical.
Okay.
Does that make any sense?
I'll have to re-listen to this again and again. It's kind of like when you learned something in college in physics or something, and the professor would tell you, but you'd have to go back and reread your notes and read the book again. I'll probably have to do that to just kind of finally grasp it.
Yeah, that's how I am too. I need to process. It takes me a little while to process. And as I was remembering these concepts and Yeshua was helping me with them, it took me, it took me a while. I mean, this is how I think during my day as well. Cause this morning I was thinking, okay, we're all one mind. We're all God's mind. And so each soul spark, or each spark of God is a personality within the one mind of God. And so as anyway, so those are the types of thoughts I have.
Those are great thoughts. Something else that you can do, and you've been able to do since you were a child, you mentioned the out-of-body experience. I know you have other abilities. And I'm curious, did these come about, do you think, because of your first near-death experience? So even though you didn't remember the experience, you gained these gifts?
I do not know. I do not remember. Again, I don't remember most of my childhood. I remember some dreams where an eagle had picked me up out of bed and I'm flying with the eagle, something like that. So I believe that we all do this, and it is a lot easier as a child, that it's natural for us. So probably yes, but it wasn't anything that I worked with as a child or remembered. But what triggered it to be able to consciously do it was when my stepfather died in 98. And I started having spontaneous sleep paralysis episodes where I would wake up and I'm paralyzed. Do you know what sleep paralysis?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes. So it's scary if you don't
You're
understand
awake,
it.
but you can't move.
Yes, yes. And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't understand what's going on, it's scary. And so I was having those on a regular basis, and I could feel a presence in the room. And of course, the conscious mind always wants to tell us that it's something scary, right? So that's what we think. And at the time, I was I wanted to know about when my stepfather passed. I wanted to know what happens when we die, because the religious doctrine that I was raised in didn't answer my questions for me. So my sister recommended George Anderson's book, We Don't Die, the medium George Anderson. So I read that. I'm like, okay, this makes sense. This makes sense here. And then as I was studying about mediums, reading books from James von Prague, and who was popular at the time, I started having these out of body experiences. And I came across a article online at the time, and this was in 1999, because my stepdad passed late 98, that talked about sleep paralysis and equated it to out of body experiences, and that you could consciously create an out of body experience. And one of the ways that benefits of out of body experiences was to be able to contact your loved ones. So I'm like, okay, this is how I can find my dad. So I bought every book I could get my hands on how to learn about consciously creating out of body experiences, and I started having them in about 3-4 weeks consciously, where I would project, and I've been doing it ever since on a conscious level.
Is that something that you can prove? So, like you observe something that you
Mm-hmm.
can later check on?
Oh, sure. A lot of the teachers, Robert Monroe has done that. There's a lot of old gurus that talk about the masters that have. I have I have been able to prove or collaborate my travels with others, and because I would form groups where we would travel to each other and see if we get hits and things like that, and we got quite a bit of hits where we were experiencing the same things like that from all sides,
Wow.
actually across the world. People were in our group were doing things like that. Yeah.
It's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
That's not your only gift, though. You also have other gifts, correct?
Yes. Well, yes, we all have our niche, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
remembered I was a what you would call a psychic kid, and we're all psychic
Mm-hmm.
kids, I believe. Just that we forget about those as we get older, and we tend to stop looking inside, trusting our inner world, and we trust our outer world more. So I was seeing dead people as a child, that type of thing, and it would scare me. And when I tell my parents about it, um, they're or my mother especially, because my dad wasn't around that much, that it scared her too. So, and my grandmother, she was very very Catholic, so something, no, 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 that kind of thing. So I pushed it down. So after my NDE and consciously working with Yeshua, I started and the out of bodies and just doing meditation, all the things that we need to do in order to explore our inner world. I was able to cultivate my psychic and mediumship abilities, and I became a hypnotherapist as well, and uh, and so I help people with all kinds of things. Plus, I have an academy and I teach metaphysical courses.
Now, your psychic abilities, can you turn those on and off? Or like say when you're talking to somebody like me, do things just sort of pop up for you?
On an intuitive level, things will.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to doing psychic readings and things like that, where I'm reading someone's energy field or communicating with their loved ones, it is something that I turn on and off, meaning I do a little bit of a ritual and I connect and I make sure that the energy or the surroundings are clean. I I bless everything in my, I bless the session. I create a sacred container for our sessions and things like that. But yeah, on an intuitive level, I'm able to read people and see their records if something comes up, or if I'm focused on it. I do need to change my focus, so it's not a matter of where I'm going around reading people. I'm not like Teresa Caputo, which I think she's great. The Long Island medium, I love her to death, but she's amazing. But I don't do that. It's not my deal. Everyone has their deal.
Something I heard you also talk about, which I hear a lot of near-death experiencers talk about, is that we're going through some sort of a transition or an evolution. Is that something that you can talk more about?
Sure. Yeah, I was shown this 20 years ago when my guys in Yeshua in particular were working with me, who I called Sananda at the time. Yes, they called it the grand plan. The grand plan. Now I hear the Great Awakening, terms like that, and that we are in that time of shifting out of a cycle, the 26,000 year cycle. The Law of One teachings talk about this as well. And so we're kind of behind the curve, because we should have shifted last cycle, but there wasn't enough of us to shift humanity totally, and the planet. So what I understand is Gaia and a lot of star seeds and people like that stayed in the lower frequency, so we could shift the masses rather than only some, that type of thing. Yeah.
Well, earlier you said you didn't have time to reincarnate, and I was curious, was that because of some of the things that you expected to go on with the Earth?
Yes, yeah. And it's more with humanity. The Earth is shifting on her own. This is what I understand is the conduit, the kind of last conduit, because she's shifting on her own. She can't keep herself back anymore, or doesn't want to.
And what do you think the timing is? Because I've had some people say it's quite far off, but I had another guest recently who said, this could happen in the next 10 years.
Well, I believe it's happening as we speak. So I have not.
I guess he meant a dramatic ramp up we could expect.
Okay.
That's probably a better way to say it.
Yeah. And I see it happening already. We're having a dramatic ramp up already. I mean, we're becoming, and the crux of it is becoming a viable partner in the galactic community. And we're moving in that phase. And I mean, we're already starting to see disclosure, right, from the government, which is not what we need to wait for, but because
right,
the star beings that work with us, the star nations that work with this planet, have decided that, thank goodness, that the best way for us to wake up to our true nature and who we truly are as star beings is to from within, bringing star seeds and people that can become aware and help the planet and help humanity. And as long as we wake up to who we are, it's a lot easier to do it that way than from the top down. We do it from, the grassroots, in the trenches, I like to say. So those of us that came into the trenches are the ones that are helping to create, or helping the shift move forward inward, which is with as much ease and grace as possible.
And so when you say intergalactic and you talked about the government disclosures, are you saying there's going to be a connection between what we consider extraterrestrials or aliens, or maybe just people or not people, but beings in other dimensions? Is that what you're thinking is going to come forward?
All of the above, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you had seen any of the whistleblower disclosures in the hearings, they've talked about non-human extraterrestrials. Yeah. And those of us that have been in the UFO community already know that, right? Like, Okay, yeah,
It's pretty
duh, no.
fascinating, isn't it?
It is. It's amazing. And so when you connect to your star family, you already know who you are and who they are. There's no doubt about it. So it's exciting to see it happening on a large mainstream scale. And I was shown that 20 years ago this was going to start happening. However, it was going to be very tough and rough, and we're going to go through a lot of well, I went through my quickening, dark night of the soul. All of that had to happen for me in order for me to wake up to my memories on a galactic scale, not just on Earth, but on a galactic scale, my soul memories. So I was waking up to all that, and that's what we're doing. Is it's like a detox. Humanity is going through a detox. All the shadows that have been in the
I think
shadows.
we need a detox.
We definitely need a
We
detox.
do.
Yeah. So all the shadows, the light that's being bombarded on our planet, and all and people like you that are bringing all this information through for people, to help trigger things in all of us, right? All these interviews and things like that are helping to trigger people and remember things and say, oh, that doesn't make any sense, or that's really cool, either one. So, but at least they're listening, and that's a crack. That's a
Right.
crack right there. So, so yeah, so we're what we're doing is shifting humanity in that way from the inside, and it's really exciting.
Although I've heard it's going to come with a lot of hardships. So, do you have any expectations of things that you're expecting to happen
Well,
besides what we've already talked about?
yeah, what I saw a lot of what's already happened. Okay, back
Okay.
then I saw
Hmm.
the epidemic. I saw that. I saw the fires. I believe we're going to have more fires. I saw a lot of fires. And what I was seeing was pretty nasty. I do believe that we have shifted that timeline to where it doesn't have to be as bad as it was, of what I saw. Okay, because they were showing me some things that, or I was seeing those things. I do believe that it's going to be a rough ride. Yeah, definitely.
I was going to say nasty in what way?
Oh, yeah, right. With mm, more, how do I put it? Well, I keep seeing fires. I see fires. Okay. Uh, Earth upheavals, perhaps, and people leaving the planet because their frequency can't handle all the light that's being bombarded, and the shift. There's a lot of people that are, and that's what happens. And there's things that come along that will cause people to leave the planet. Okay. And it doesn't mean it's a bad thing, as much as, I mean, for family, of course, and people are left here, but it shifts their soul. That was their soul journey and their soul contract. So I do see that there's a huge mass awakening, and during that awakening, there's going to be, which we see it happening already. So a lot of what I saw is happening now. We're going to see the polarization as we wake up. Yeah. As humanity wakes up on a whole. So we have to do, what I was shown was we have to do our own inner work. And then that is exponential.
So, when you say people are going to leave the planet, they're not just floating away. I mean,
No,
how are they leaving the planet?
I meant they're transitioning their body, leaving their body
They're
behind.
dying.
Yeah.
And the reason this is really interesting to me is I just had Vinnie Tolman on, who was saying some similar things. And he said there's going to be a lot of things happening in the cities
Mm-hmm.
that are going to be quite dangerous. And he alluded to the same thing.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I mean, they're already happening in the cities, in the inner cities. It's a lot of cities are very hard to live in. I mean, I live near Portland, and so Portland has changed a lot. So I wouldn't want to be down there at night, when before didn't bother me. Just different areas of Portland. So things like that. Yeah. But I agree that things are happening. There's, and depending on how you want to look at it, we're definitely shifting. And when, like you said, when you go through a detox, things come up that have not been dealt with for a long time come to the surface to be cleansed. And it's nasty stuff. When you think about our body, and then we think of, the body of the earth and humanity, the collective body of humanity.
And I assume when these people are passing, you're assuming, or you're telling us that they will go through some sort of a process. It's not like they're done somewhere else outside of this lifetime.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah, everyone is loved and taken care of on the other side, as long as we know that we know how to die. That's another thing, is that in Western society we haven't really been taught how to die. So
Right.
yeah, and it's one thing that everyone does. So we should be taught how to die.
Is there any way that we can prepare?
Well, yeah, I believe there's lots of ways, and I think the most important thing is to have a connection with some higher being, higher force, whether it be source, God, any type of Allah, any type of higher connection, that rather than looking outside ourselves for validating who we are. This is the only thing that can validate who we are, is that connection to source. And as long as we have that within us and know that we are connected to source, whatever term we want to use, and that it's a pure love, then I believe that we're fine, because we live in, unfortunately, in these denser realms, we live in so much fear, and people have this huge fear of death, which is how we can control people, right? With fear of death, which there's nothing to fear. It's just move, and people in NDE years will tell you it's like moving from one room into another, as long as we have that awareness. So dropping our fears and having a connection and remembering who we are is really important.
Now, that's tough because so many of us were kind of trained to have that fear as we were growing up.
Right. Yeah. And that's what we're shifting through, because that's really huge. We're shifting through that because we're dropping the programs. It's programming, like you said. So we're dropping the programs, and as we do our own inner work, we see the programming throughout, our current life and into other lifetimes, because we come in with programs, with our ancestry and our own experiences and things like that. So it'd be nice to be a clean slate when we come here, but
Wouldn't it?
yeah, I don't know. I I haven't seen anyone that hasn't had some lifetimes in my work that hasn't had some lifetimes that they need to clean up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if we have a clean slate, we get a lot of stuff kind of
Even
messed
while
up
here in our current
while we're
in our
here.
current
Right.
life.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a constant thing. But being aware, and Yeshua always says the awareness is the key. Being aware is always the goal, for sure.
So, with your two near death experiences, and then plus all of the continued work that you've been doing, what is the most important takeaway for you?
Mm, a lot what I just expressed about having that connection to yourself, to your higher self, to your God self, because we're all expressions of God, of Source, the God mind. We're expressions, and so knowing that we are love encompassed in our bodies, we just kind of, a lot of us, and we forget from time to time that that's what we're here to remember and express as we walk through our day. And there's all different ways, and it's not the love that we experience here, it's love for everything, every moment. And Yeshua talks about blessing everything in our life, blessing every moment, and especially things that we don't agree with and we don't resonate with. Bless them. Doesn't mean we have to bring them into our life, but bless them. And then we're transmuting, we're transforming our life to where our life is a blessing all around us. And I always see challenges as a blessing, opportunity for growth and learning how to, best get through it. I shouldn't say always. I was remembered. And so things like that, we're looking at life and things around us that may seem crazy and that we just don't agree with, or things like that. It's okay to have a preference, but bless it anyway. And that helps me with getting through things that really trigger me, things like that. Yeah. And know that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, and I do think that just through life experiences, as well as listening to all of you amazing guests, I really have learned that sometimes hardships can be our greatest blessings.
There you go. Yeah. How can we learn if we don't have challenges?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of challenges, I have a viewer who has asked me to ask this question, and I hope it's okay if I ask you.
Of course.
So if you could give him some insight on this. So the viewer says, and this is a viewer who is feeling ignored by God. So he asks, if God is real and loves us, why does he ignore us even when we beg and plead? And if he is communicating with us, why doesn't he make it more obvious? It makes me feel like God is make-believe.
I understand that question. And I hear that a lot too.
I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Oh, totally. Yeah. That kind of went through my head this morning or earlier when I was thinking, why does our connection, the other side, have to be so silent?
Mm-hmm.
And when I mean, it's called faith, right?
Right.
And trust. What I've learned and remembered is that the more we ask for little signs around us, and the more that we notice them, the wider our conduit becomes, and the more we're able to see God, source, God in our life. And I believe that we have this idea that God has to show up in a certain way. Now, I remembered, and this is what Yeshua taught me as well, and I remembered that God shows up in so many ways. We just forget that that is God. When someone gives you a smile, that is God. When you're feeling down and someone tells you a joke, that is God. That's God whispering to you, because messages from spirit are like whispers. They're light, so they're subtle, whereas the ego is heavy and is loud, right? So anything that makes you feel good, that gives you joy, watching your children play, that's God talking to you. Okay. Helping a stranger, that's God talking to you. All those little things is God talking to you. When we get in that place of feeling that we're being ignored or abandoned, it's very hard for us to hear and notice those blessings all around us, because God blesses us everywhere. And if we're feeling really, really crappy on a day and it's a really awful day, I guarantee you there's something in that day that made you smile or that you didn't expect. That's your conduit. That's God saying, I love you. Everything's going to be okay.
And I think too, sometimes we ask for things. I'm guilty of this. And then when they come, we kind of forget that to say thank you. We just sort of don't really notice. And I think we have to be more aware of that. I need to be more aware of that.
Yeah, totally. And not that God needs a thank you, but gratitude is the highest frequency. Gratitude and love, of course, but gratitude is a very, very high frequency. So being grateful for, even like you said, the challenges, it transmutes everything. It really does.
You have developed a very close relationship with Jesus. And I think it's really admirable because kind of reflecting on what the question was about from our viewer is that, there are 8 billion people on this planet. And I think we kind of get lost in the masses and we think, well, God isn't going to help me. He's helping all these other people. He's too busy. But I think what you're kind of showing us is that we do have that one-on-one relationship.
Definitely. Yeah. And if you consider, and just to consider that we are all one within the mind of God, we're not separate. And that was the biggest sin, if you want to call it, error in thought, is that we are separated from God. And that's what hurts our heart. And that's why we have pain and why we have suffering and that type of thing, is because we believe that we are separated from God, and we're not. We are all one. It's like us thinking that we're separate from our hand. We're not.
Right.
Yeah.
And people can connect with you as well. You have a website and on there they can get lots of information. I know you do lots of things to help people. You mentioned you had an academy. So tell us more about all of that.
Yes, my website is SharonSananda.com, and you can check me out on my website. I do sessions, personal sessions, and if you're in the Portland area, I do things in person too. Do sessions in person and have events. I also do all kinds of online events through my academy. I teach about, I have a course on out-of-body experiences and lucid dreaming. I have a course on psychic mediumship, and that's coming up next month. And honing your skills and just, diving into your intuitive abilities, your psychic and mediumship abilities. And even if you don't want to do it as a practice, but just remembering that you can connect, and we can all connect to our loved ones on the other side, because it's love that connects us. And that's all we need to tune into. And I teach courses on past life soul retrieval classes, how to help us remember how to do that, which is shamanic work. Okay. And it's, Yeshua taught me, which is very interesting because it's Jesus, Yeshua, who taught me about past life soul retrieval. Yeah. And so he taught me a method on how to bring in our fragmented parts of us into our oversoul. And I do lots of stuff, and it's, life is good. I love working with people.
Well, I can tell just by talking to you today that you have so much wisdom to share. You're a beautiful soul, and I'm sure that you're helping a lot of people, and I'm glad that more people are hearing about your website and all that you do.
Oh, well, thank you, Heather. It's, I'm in my crone phase of the triple goddess, maiden, mother, crone, which is my favorite part. I got to say, I didn't raise children; I just raised animals. So, my favorite part. And yeah, for all the women out there in this phase, bless it, love it, because it's our wisdom. It's when we are sitting in our wisdom and the foundation of the community, and that's coming.
And you just gave us some beautiful words, but do you have some parting words that you can share with those that are listening?
Oh, I would just say, have fun, enjoy life, live life to the fullest, and things are going to be okay. And one thing Yeshua taught me is don't take myself so seriously, which is, sometimes hard to do, but laugh, enjoy life, dance, sing, laugh. Yeah.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Sharon. I have so enjoyed talking to you today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Heather.
Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to Beyond with Heather Tesch to look for more episodes.